So I want to introduce at first the director of the documentary we have seen, Who Made You, Iiris Härmä from Finland. Welcome. Thank you. Your applause. And you have a lot of experience as a documentarist. It's more than 20 years that you've worked as a producer, production coordinator, director and writer in documentary film productions. And you have a very interesting background because you studied ethnology and cultural studies at the University of Turku. And you also studied film studies at New York at the New School University. And you have a very small production company in Finland with your husband, who was the cinematographer of the film Visa Koisu Kantilla. So it's very interesting that you have a combination between profession and private life in your company. But that's not the topic today. Okay, and our second guest from Berlin is Dr. Isabella Hermann. She is the scientific coordinator of the working group Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence. And the interesting point is that you are a political scientist, and you worked in your dissertation about the relations between Venezuela and the USA. But you're also very interested in science fiction, and that's why you are here today. And earlier this evening we spoke together, and you said you're very interested in discourse analysis and how a topic should be questionized. And that's how we want to talk today about artificial intelligence you're working about a lot of different science fiction movies, Star Trek, Star Wars, and I think I learned that your most favorite science fiction is Battlestar Galactica. That's correct. Okay, so maybe we get a combination of it during this discussion. We will talk together around about 20 minutes, and later I will open the microphone to you. I think a lot of you will have some questions about the film. First of all, we want, of course, discuss about your documentary, but also these very interesting short films we've also seen this evening. But first of all, how did you work for your documentary? You traveled around a lot in the world, in Europe. You have been in Greece, in Spain, in Japan. How long did you need to realize this topic, and how did you find your interview partners?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to see so many people here in the audience. And so this film, Who Made You, actually the idea came to me in 2015 when I went to listen up Helsinki University Science competition, and there this Michael Laakasoo, who is also in the film, he pitched his research project of moralities of intelligent machines. And actually I'm not so technologically oriented person, but I'm interested of humans, and I thought that this is something what I haven't been really thinking, that we are now living this technological turn, and it's coming so close to us that it really affects to our private environment, and not only ours but also our children and our parents and everybody who is around. And of course it's not like it happens in one day. It happens step by step. We take this new technology into our lives, but something I felt that as a documentary filmmaker, this is very great opportunity for me to, because it's not so many revolutions that we can live through, and this is one what I also can experience. And so I started the journey, and I thought that my vision was somehow to capture the zeitgeist of this era, and that was because I didn't have very clear view what is the film is about, but I knew that it's about values and humans and new technologies and what they bring to us, what kind of questions. I wanted to raise questions, not so many answers, but more to think that what it really can, how it affects to us, and what do we have to ask in this time now. And that was the starting point, and I started in Finland, and I found this researcher and also some other Finnish people, and I interviewed, and that was kind of the how I started. But then well, it's not very visual if we only see these people talking, so I also brought these robots into this film, and I thought because those are machines that use artificial intelligence, and so it's very natural to take robots into this film. So it was quite a long process to make, but and very different. What I've never done this kind of film before. Usually my films I've been following one person and one kind of individual stories, but this was something new I wanted to try.
Yeah. In the film, we can see some cyborgs with implants. They are wearing open to walk around with microchips, with sensors and all this stuff. Could you imagine to become a cyborg, or are there some borders for you?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before. So thank you all for coming here. Thank you for the super interesting documentary. Talking about those implants, I mean, I'd never do that because it's really a surveillance issue and people are not really thinking about what could happen, right? They could be hacked, so you can be controlled everywhere you go. So I think it's amazing, actually, that they really see this as a lifestyle thing. So, well, get a cyborg, that's cool. But not really thinking about the surveillance aspect and about the critical things. I mean, I'm a social scientist, so I'm always critical, so sorry for that. But that's also with this whole AI thing. I mean, we all use Google Maps and Facebook, and we pay the service with our data and get socially scored. And also states use it, and I think in the film it was really well depicted by the young scientist, the researcher, right, who did also this thing in the woods, because he really raised the important issues. And what I think with this robot aspect, I mean, it's pretty important to bring them in because they are very illustrative, but I think the whole thing is not about robots. Actually, this robot thing, this is a joke. I mean, this is not about what's going on, but it really distracts from what is going on. So, I mean, it happens that political committees are now discussing about laws for robots because you get so distracted, but what's really going on are the AI systems that kind of score people and that are used by governments, and they reduce our world to little models and can really discriminate against people, and that's what it actually is about, and not those robots.
Yeah. Scoring is a very scary aspect of the third film we've seen, and I thought about scoring in China, so this is already real. And you told me about this microchip implants. There are already 4,000 customers who are using it, and they are very open for this technology. And how would you think about this? Is it a real danger for the people to be scored, and that something could happen with them from the government, for example?
I would be very suspicious to do that, but I can understand somehow these people because, like you remember the microchip guy from Stockholm. His name is Johan Österlund, and he has very strong ideology there that he wants to make everything very smooth. That we don't have this kind of obstacles when we can walk in the doors and we can go to the public transportation just by showing, or not even showing our microchip, but just to have it with us. And so that the whole idea, what is the future, what kind of, where we want to live is more like that we are like a part of this, we really, like in this, this short fiction movie where they would hand these gloves. I didn't understand everything because it wasn't subtitled, but somehow it was all affecting to their lives, the whole what they were touching. And at the same time, in this, if you have this microchip, that the ideology that that you don't really have to think about bureaucracy or anything, that it's always in you. But he also pointed out very important thing, what is not in a film, that if we would also own our own data, that if it was my data, not Google or Facebook or no one else owns, but I own it, so I can decide if I want to sell it to somebody. It would be my property, and it was also his ideas that it would be like it was also our right to own it. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course, and. Out of a film historical perspective, we are living in very interesting times. If we go back to the early movies, the silent movie Metropolis from Fritz Lang, there we have this robot Maria, and then over the years there are so many films who have this different kind of robots, of cyborgs, the replicants from Blade Runner, robots in Star Wars. But today we have some examples from reality. So how close are we today to these ideas of the cultural perspective?
I mean, there are many people and visionary people and futurists who have this idea about developing humanoid robots. And I think this is really a very old or eternal human desire to create something, and then there also goes the fear with it that this creation comes out of control. So Asimov, the famous science fiction author, called this the Frankenstein complex. Because it's always these two sides, right? And this is, but this is also when we see those films with humanoid robots. I think it's really important to see that those robots are a foil or a projection canvas for really basic human desires and fears. So because actually those films, you know, when you have those robots, they're not about robots, they're about humans. And because of that, they are played by humans. I mean, which actually is ridiculous, but when you have a robot in a film, it should have or should be played by a robot, right? But in your film, I think it's pretty clear, if you have a look at those robots, they are really kind of illustrations for this uncanny valley, which is actually the name when a robot is not really human-like, but kind of, and then we get scary. So the mimics and gestures, it doesn't really fit. And so I think there is a huge gap right now if we see those real humans in films playing robots, and then we see the real robots. And yeah, I'd say again, so because this is, I think it's really important, this is not the important thing about AI. This is just playing around. So the important things are the systems that kind of control societies. Or put it really in, it's not about machine against man, like in those films, it's really what AI does between humans or within societies. So it's not really about some machine-like robot, but what happens to the people.
But in fact, we will have these AI technologies in reality.
We have it, of
and
course.
We have it, and it will become much more influenceable. And during the process of your production, did you get another view to AI technologies? Have you been much more open, and then you said, "Oh, it's not a good." Good way for the future. What do you think about that?
Well, actually, I'm quite optimistic by myself. I see that there are a lot of challenges, and I feel that now also this kind of events are very important, that we talk about these issues and we raise the awareness and also make regulations and like it was demanded there. But I see many ways there are, of course there are, like if we think about equality, I think there are a lot of challenges that we can, how to make artificial intelligence to equal to everybody, not discrimination, and to be inside those values, those dark values, that how can we keep it clean somehow, how to say. But it's also, it also can bring other side, that we can use it for positive things. That if we think about development countries and what kind of possibilities it can bring to remote areas, these all new technologies, and for example, all kind of applications where to make women's safety more like better in some areas, or that kind of I cannot even name how many good applications can be done. So I'm very optimistic that all kind of things, like today I heard that there are these cattle headers in Mali, very tribe, and they are using artificial intelligence through and satellite pictures to find water for the animals. So I think this kind of, it's wonderful that we can use this all new technology. And that's one reason I didn't want to make this film. We have seen science fiction, which is very, very scary, but I didn't want to make this film too scary. I wanted that there is, like in the end, there is this ring of people and they are holding each other and singing, and then, okay, it ends like this, but it means that, okay, now we are here and we have all possibilities and we have to carry on together.
So the question is how we will use these technologies. In Germany, we have a big discussion about AI for industries. AI could kill jobs, for example, and what will the human beings do if there are no jobs left and how can they live and how they can organize their lives?
There are many surveys going around about job loss, and I do understand that people are afraid, of course, but that has always been the case. There have always been revolutions, but right now it's really getting faster and faster. So in the past it was kind of a whole generation, and right now those technological cycles are pretty fast. But I really think we need kind of a positive image of our future, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I'm really afraid of the future and think we're going to head into a direction where we have mass employment and we all get kind of substituted by machines, actually this kind of fear causes inaction, and then nothing happens. So for example, I don't see any political vision in no political party, to be honest, that there is really a...
And this is missing in public discussion.
I don't see kind of a really positive view on the future with technology. And this kind of, causes inaction, because, as you said, the thing is that it's human-made, so we are behind that. So if we have all those models, I think you can do a lot of good things with AI, as you said. So if this is not really, if this is not ethically sensitive. So for example, if you have optimization of warehouses or optimization of logistic chains, or even kind of helping people to find or helping animals to find water, there is no actually ethical frictions. But if you use it, for example, to score people who are unemployed, and this is going on right now. This is not science fiction. In Poland and in Austria, it's going on. So people get scored. There are 3 categories. And if you're in the best category, you don't get support because you find a job anyway. If you're in the last category, you don't get support because you don't find a job anyway. And in this group are, of course, for example, moms who raise their child alone, people who don't have a very good education. And these are actually the people in our society who need the support most. And I think this is a crazy thing doing for a democracy, because democracy is about supporting minorities, actually. And this system gets automized. And this is one thing that is not about optimization of warehouses. This really touches humans, and it's all human-made. There are people behind that. They're creating the value, the models, the values, they're selecting the data, and this is not, a system that comes from outside and then we have to live with it. And I think these are really the important things for having a good future, kind of being aware that we can protest against this if it's not really accord with our democratic values. And this is also, with the job situation, we have to kind of think positively in a way. and see the chances. I mean, we can get rid of all the dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs, actually, but you have to frame it differently, kind of focus on the real problems.
So where is the gap in this discussion? You met a lot of people, innovators, scientists, businessmen who want to make money with these technologies, politicians. There weren't politicians in your film. One member of the parliament. Is it because they don't talk with each other? How is the gap between it? Should the critic you brought in is that maybe there are some questions which aren't answered yet?
Yes, sure. I think that researchers made the point that because demanding the transparency and demanding that we shouldn't allow it all happen behind the scenes or somewhere else. That we should be openly developing these technologies and understand that there are values, and that how can we prevent them, how can we search them, how can we be aware that those things, yeah. So it's, yeah, I think the whole thing there is that to be aware.
Time is running, so we can open the question around to the audience, and we have some staff members with microphones. So are there any questions there behind, I see?
I mean, we certainly need regulation, absolutely. So this really needs to be regulated. And I mean, luckily or fortunately in the European Union, we are trying to push that with this ethical AI and AI made in Europe. But what's really, again, a problem is because right now there are so many political issues within the European Union that this is not really tackled, but this counts for other issues as well. And I think an important thing is that there is no need to use AI in any occasions and possibilities, you know. I mean, of course, financial markets seem to be non-ethical, but it has really huge ethical consequences. But also in those social spheres, for example, recruiting, or like with the job agency scoring, what I just told, or in all those other areas, nobody tells us that we need to use AI there. So why should we use those systems just because it's there? So maybe there is also some regulation in need, that we just have spaces where we don't want to use it because there are really humans involved. And I think maybe this is also partly an answer that always when you use AI or develop a system like that, which then gets automated and you have negative feedback loops and all those problems, you really should think about the possible victims. And I think this is really not done. I mean, there are kind of systems developed and no one is thinking about possible victims. And maybe if you're a state like China, it doesn't matter because the individual is not, or individual rights are not that important. But at least in our democratic systems, you really should think about the possible victims. And even with kind of big financial systems, which seems to be really kind of neutral or whatsoever, there is no neutral system, and there are human victims of those kind of, yeah, I mean, there was this flash crash, right, which was also mentioned in the film. So there are human victims.
And we haven't discussed artificial intelligence in military order, so that's I think I don't think we want to open this this box. Are there any further questions? So maybe I have one left because in your film we could see, for example, the sex dolls or the exercise doll with the elder people training their skills. And on the other side, human beings are also social beings, and if we are confronted with these AIs and we can think about isolation and a post-human world, for example, do you see this as a danger?
Well, actually, I heard from Japan that when they are developing these androids, and it's quite weird that we, like in service, we are already talking with bots, all kind of bots. But if we are replacing them with these robots, it will be quite weird. But it can be very economically very good business, because they told me the example that they were creating this kind of Erika robot for use in big warehouses, and she was selling people cashmere, some very cashmere scarves, very expensive ones, and she was very good at doing that, like inviting people to come and taking contact and talking, start conversation, and then selling those quite expensive things. And think about that kind of world without any more contact with other people, but this dolls are selling us everything.
Yeah.
Or just one.
There is one question, but you can answer it again.
No, because also in this whole discussion in Germany and on the European Union level on the use of bots, there is kind of this claim that it needs to be kind of made open or marked if you talk to a bot. So this is one of the major claims, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, but I heard that there is in Berlin or somewhere in Germany they are using this in train station, this face detective. I think it was quite scary, and it happens here. But it also happens in Finland. In some school they started to use it, and I think that kind of technologies, I'm not very okay with it yet. Are you?
I don't think so. So it's a very interesting political question. For example, here in Karlsruhe, they don't want to install video cameras in public spaces to get a much better security feeling for the people. So where can you use this technology? Because we already have it. Here in Karlsruhe, there is the Fraunhofer Institute, EOSB, which researches in these technologies, and we are very far. But the question, I agree, is should we use it in reality, or are there any moral borders?
Yeah, this is what I just said before. Maybe there are moral borders, and we shouldn't use it at all in some spaces. But even if we use it, so again, what I think is really important that we really see we have agency here. And so, for example, if we have facial recognition systems and then they go through a database and kind of have comparisons if you're a criminal or something. So this is not kind of neutral. So this, it's not kind of, you can program that in a neutral way. It's always, for example, a really an active decision if you have more false positive or more false negatives. So, for example, if more people pop up who are actually innocent, or if more people pop up who, or if less people pop up who are actually a criminal. So, I think you get the point. And this is actually in a democracy, this is a decision if I rather decide for more fairness or for more justice, or if I decide for more optimization or for more efficiency. So if I go for, I have more false negatives, so I decide for more efficiency. Then innocent people pop up, I mean anyhow, but it's more efficient because maybe we're all safer. So if I decide for more false, what did I say before? If I decide for more false negatives, then it's more for for justice, actually. So this is really decisions that are programmed into the code and into the system. And you know, it's just not neutral out there, and someone can kind of program that. I think this is really important. In Germany, I mean, so as to my knowledge, I mean, there are groups who demand that, but I think this is not really state of the art anymore to kind of open everything, but there is no use, in fact. So if you have the algorithm and you have machine learning or deep learning algorithms, you really cannot trace it all back, so it's impossible. What's actually the claims of groups is, for example, there is Algorithm Watch, there is Bertelsmann Stiftung who does a lot, Initiative D21 who does a lot, Stiftung Neue Verantwortung. These, I mean, there are really many groups who do that. And actually what the claim is there is to view algorithms as a social system and not just as the code. And if you view it as a social system or an algorithmic system, everything comes in. It comes in who's the coder, what is the model of the coder, are the coders diverse? Is it only, I don't know, the cliché, white males, or are they kind of, is it more diverse? So what kind of models is this based on, what kind of data is selected? And these are things you can make transparent. So if you say kind of, I have a model, it's built like this. If I say I use this in the data, is this biased or not? Is the data fair? And this actually is more important than have the open code. So as to my knowledge, I mean, I'm working with these groups actually because we are in a constant exchange. So me and my group, I'm coordinating at the Academy and all the others. So this is actually the major claim, to have more the system transparent than the technical code.
Okay, in Finland we are now in our government is very active with this ethical artificial intelligence, and ethics is one really big topic now in Finland actually, and it started last year, and they are really pushing and putting a lot of money to all kind of NGOs and organization and official institutes to raise awareness in all. That if I mean sustainable and equality in Finland, that old people, that they don't get behind or they are not left behind, and also among young people, that everybody would be involved somehow, or to be somehow sensitized to these new technologies. And I think it's in the northern countries, and I also think that here we are aware of this revolution, and I think a lot of work is done for people like me who am not so technologically oriented. It's just for ordinary people to understand more. Because as you told, it's not about robots; it's everything else what is behind.
I had the feeling in your film, in this dialogues between the children and the robot, that some of the children were a little bit afraid about this technology. Was it also your imagination about? And related to this question, I was thinking about that the younger people are digital natives. That's already real, and maybe the young people who will get into this new technological world with artificial intelligence, they will have a more open mind about these technologies. What do you think about it?
Well, that's something what I think. I also thought that it's so, but because I have been screening this film for young people also, and they don't know any more else than we know. So how could they know more? So I think it's we need to educate everybody on these issues, and of course people can be like those children. I love those scenes with the children because those are first time when they meet this robot, and it's very authentic interaction with the robot. And some were more afraid, and they were just like I think I would have been.
One last statement, last words.
Oh my God.
We are out of time. I'm very sorry.
Okay. So coming to your question, just to add something, so I start with the negative and then I go to the positive, that we might go out in a good mood or have the next film in a good mood. So I think about, I think AI has the potential also to increase inequalities within societies and not only between North and South, and you can see that already. And but what I also see, you always have power and counter power. So if for example, in African countries, I mean not in all, I know Africa is not a continent, but in some of the countries where you have not so democratic systems, you can use social media, for example, to protest, but then again, the government uses they do internet shutdowns or they slow it down, or as we have seen in Ethiopia, maybe it was, I think for the last 11 days, there was no internet at all because there were protests and they just shut it down. So how can you kind of make use then of all those opportunities? But on the other side, we have this whole movement of Afrofuturism, which has a really positive view on the future and really a feeling like we can do better with tech. And I think this is a very, very optimistic perspective for the future. And they're really doing cool things. I mean, maybe you have seen Black Panther. If you don't, watch it. It's amazing. I think it's really super cool. And this gives some of the feeling what's going on there. And I think, we really can learn something from this positive view.
I would agree. See this movie, it's very great. Okay, so thank you very much, Iiris Härmä and Isabella Hermann, for this discussion. I think it was very interesting. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And it's your applause.